course. And it looks like this expansion is going to go down, trying to focus down this one Zealot with a few more Zerglings, although that's not going to be enough, and a few more Hydralisks building out at the expansion. Although this hatchery is dying quickly, it looks like I'm going to quickly be at a disadvantage here for the Econ, as he is now getting his secondary base up. Although no Nexus, I'm sorry, I thought he was building a Nexus up here, but apparently just building pylons and cannons so that he can defend it. So at this point, economically, we are pretty even. If we take a look at the income tab here, we can see that he does have a slight advantage right now, but for the most part, pretty even, since we are still both on one base right now. And sending some Hydralisks out, trying to do a little bit of damage here, but folks firing down one Stalker, but there is still enough, and more Stalkers coming into play here now. So those 4 Hydralisks are going to have to retreat, all of them pretty low on health, trying to get some more units out, frantically building more Hydralisks, and at this point sending down another hatchery, since my production has effectively been cut in half, losing the expansion hatchery. I'm going to have to get another hatchery up so that I can continue to produce at the rate I need to defend this base. And this queen, it looks like, has been in the fray a little bit, taking some hits, throwing down some spawn larva, although more energy than it should be throwing down. Yeah, we do have a creep tumor here, expanding the creep of my base so that I can, of course, move quicker along between the two bases, which is crucial as you're expanding your bases. Keeping that creep highway, so to speak, is what I've heard a lot of people refer to it as. Just keeping as much of the area between bases covered in creep so that your Zerg units get the extra 70%, or I'm sorry, I think it's 30% move increase speed, so that they can actually defend against that. And a Nidus Worm going up in the line of sight blockers in the back of Necator's base, unloading now, and it looks like he does have a decent amount of cannons back here to defend against this, sending some Zerglings in, and those Zerglings are going to go down very quickly, deciding to retreat immediately and loading everything back up into the Nidus Worm so that we can defend the base. As you can see, Necator is moving out a decent sized army. He's got a lot of Stalkers, a few sentries, and a couple of Void Rays in the mix, and unloading this army immediately. A decent amount of Hydras to deal with this, and it looks like since the sentries are not in the mix, that is going to hurt him, and his army is going to go down relatively quickly to this mass Hydra fire. So, and it looks like losing both of those Void Rays as well, and all these Stalkers will go down. It looks like he's going to retreat these 3 Stalkers. Folks firing 1 down, only 2 left now, although he does have 1 Zealot and a few more sentries to help. Although at this point, the Hydras are trying to focus fire down this 1 remaining Stalker that has 25 hit points. And it looks like these Hydras are going to stop short and try to take out the Zealot and sentries, although these sentries are going to do a lot of damage to these Hydras, taking most of them down. Zerglings coming into the mix now. And one thing to make note of is the Guardian Shield that the sentries have does not help against Zerglings, because it only protects from ranged attacks that are outside of the Guardian Shield that is in play. So when melee units such as Zerglings or Ultras get into that Guardian Shield, they actually do full damage, and that Guardian Shield does not help at all. So not as powerful or useful against a Zergling attack, which is why those Zerglings were crucial in getting in there. Getting the expansion back up, the natural going back up right now with another hatchery, and also trying to take the high yield base so that I can hopefully catch up a little bit, because at this point I'm assuming, even though I have not yet seen that he has this expansion up and running. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I did spot that apparently. I forgot those Zerglings were just up there and saw, although I was assuming that he did have that for longer, because as I noted earlier, he just had the pylon and cannons defending this, and he had not built the Nexus initially. So at this point I'm assuming he did have that Nexus up for longer than he did. And it looks like he is moving out here, killing the Overlord that is spotting the expansion up here. So I am aware that he is moving out at this point to try to take this over. There were some Zerglings up here that were going to try to flank out and take that probe out and try to kill the pylon he was building. But of course, that Overlord going down quickly enough that I was not able to do that. It looks like the hatchery at the natural just about finished here. And the Nidus Worm not being used anymore, of course, because he did kill the Nidus Worm that was built behind his line of sight blockers. I'm going to switch back to everyone view here so that we can see everything that's going on. It looks like he has a decent amount of warp gates here. Rolling with about 5. Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought that was 6. It is 5 though. 5 warp gates total, which will allow him to macro up a decent sized army in a relatively short amount of time. Although at this point his main base is completely mined out, so completely on one base right now, trying to mine his natural. And then of course it looks like he is getting ready to expand up to the base in the looks like 11 o'clock position. And then the expansion up at the yellow minerals also going up right now. Necator does have one zealot scouting out the map, trying to find out if I've taken any additional expansions. Looks like he's going to the 6 o'clock position now, and then going to check the natural for that. And then, of course, the middle expansion in the lower right here, which would be the, I guess, the 4 or 5 o'clock position there. So he is actually moving his army out here. So he is going to run into this high yield base, and I'm going to have to pull these drones away to try to keep them alive. This is a decent sized Protoss force though, so I don't know if this is going to be enough Zerglings and Hydras to deal with it. Of course, though, remember those Zerglings do full damage inside that Guardian Shield, and they're able to take out all those sentries before the Hydralisks get in there, so that Guardian Shield very ineffective at this point, and that Void Ray going down relatively quickly as well. And it looks like these Zerglings aren't going to have any problems cleaning up the remainder of this Stalker army. As you can see, just a great example of how effective Zerglings are against sentries and Stalkers. Just because of how quick they are, they can get in and get a very quick surround. And as I mentioned a couple times already, that Guardian Shield does not do any, it does not give them any additional armor against the Zergling melee attack. And at this point, I am aware that he does have some cannons up here defending this base, and of course he is now putting down the Nexus to try to get that up and running. So at this point, my main base has been mined out as well, although my natural is mining strong at this point, trying to get some more drones up here at the high yield base. And the hatchery is still at pretty good health, throwing down some spawn larvae on that hatchery, as is so important. It is something that I see people forget to do a little bit later in the game from time to time, just as things get a little bit crazy and you're trying to micro and macro and you've got units and battles going on all over the map. Sometimes it's very easy to forget to do that. And actually, one thing to note too is I should have one more queen up right here. I do have 2 hatcheries in my base here, and it would be ideal if I were able to get a queen up here to use to spawn larvae on each of these additional buildings to continue to increase my production. And as you can see, putting down a creep tumor out here so that I can continue to move the creep out so I can better defend this high yield base, which is right now a little bit disconnected. It is the furthest base away from my main, so trying to keep the army in between both places right now so that I can quickly move and react to any attacks that he may be bringing up. And again, that queen throwing down the spawn larva, that ability is so important. And it looks like the expansion up at the 11 o'clock position has been finished for Necator, so trying to start transferring probes over here, and a couple of robotics facilities going down. So it looks like we may be seeing, I would imagine it would be some Colossus, because at this point I have not shown any roaches, which is what Immortals are really a hard counter for. They are also pretty good against Hydralisks, but they are really the best counter against roaches. The Colossi are really the strongest counter against pretty much all Zerg ground. So they do very well against Zerglings, they do very well against Hydralisks, and they are pretty strong against roaches as well, although not quite as strong as what the Immortal offers, but they do a pretty good job as well if you have a couple of those on the back of your Zealot Sentry line. And it looks like he's getting the robotics base, so that does seem like that's what he will be pulling together here. Going to be adding some Colossi into his army. If we take a look at the income tab, at this point I do have a slight advantage, although not much, which is kind of surprising to me, quite honestly, just looking at this while the game is going, because at this point I do have the high yield base right here, and it is completely saturated, and I do believe, actually, that it looks like that must be why, because I do not have my expansion completely saturated. I must have transferred some drones from this natural expansion to the high yield and not replaced them with additional drones. So apparently a mistake on my part in the econ game, although throwing down another hatchery here at the 5 o'clock position, 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever that would be, so that I can get some additional income, because at this point I am pretty much even with Necator as far as the amount of bases that we both have. So needing to get down that extra base to again take a little bit of an econ advantage, and looking at both of our both of our resources here, I do have more resources, and at this point the reason being is I'm trying to save up for some Ultralists. As you can see, the infestation pit is down and the lair is now upgrading into a hive, because the Ultralists are just fantastic meat shields if you can get some of those on the front lines along with some Zerglings. If you remember in StarCraft 1, one of the most cost-effective ground armies that you could roll with would be the Zergling Ultralist combo, because Ultras are obviously great meat shields, and if you have the speed upgrades for the Zerglings, they can do such quick attack. It's really tough to deal with that combination of meat shield and speed attack from the Zerglings. And it looks like a decent sized army coming up from Necator right now. well, I guess it's not too big of an army, but he does have a lot of powerful units. 2 Colossi, and it looks like 4 Archons in the mix. Although I'm surprised that he's morphing these into Archons before using them on the battlefield with the Psystorm. Typically what you see in a PvZ when they're using High Templars is they will throw down Psystorm in the middle of a battle and then morph the High Templars into Archons. So a little surprised to see that he's doing that in his base rather than taking advantage of the energy for the Psystorm. But I guess everybody has their own play.